Workers of the world unite, a fairy tale or necessity for our survival and collective liberation. International Workers' Day, IWD, also known as May Day, on May 1st is the commemoration of the first international labor struggle, which happened in pursuit of the 8-hour workday. May 1st was chosen to honor the contributions of the U.S. working class for their efforts in organizing the U.S. general strike that began on May 1st, 1886. But the U.S. is one of the only nation-states in the world that does not recognize May Day. This is done intentionally to suppress the history of working class resistance and solidarity between workers in the U.S. with workers internationally. Instead, the U.S. observes Labor Day, a retail holiday with no mention of working class solidarity. The U.S. rich ruling class works to intentionally sever us, not just from our relationship to the international working class, but also from our own identity as workers. We are propagandized into seeing ourselves as consumers first and as workers second, if at all. But we are the working class, both on and off the clock, and the class struggle goes on beyond the site of our labor. The constant increase in the cost of living, attacks on our public services and resources, tearing our communities apart through gentrification, state-sanctioned kidnappings and genocide, imperialist war, and climate change are all battlegrounds in the class war between the workers and the capitalists. If class division is a key strategy of our exploiter, then class solidarity must be a key strategy for our collective liberation. General Strike of 1886 and New Orleans General Strike of 1892. Worker solidarity helps, not hurts, our struggle. The International Revolution, through the creation of large factories, brought huge numbers of workers into shared space. Workers seized this opportunity to organize. One of the greatest demands lifted by workers across borders was the call for the 8-hour workday. In coordination with workers internationally, U.S. labor unions and socialist and communist organizations called for 2 years of intentional organizing that would take place across job roles and industries to agitate and organize for the 8-hour workday. If this goal was not achieved, a general strike would take place across the country on May 1st, 1886. The build-up to May 1st was historic in its efforts to unite workers across industries. At this time, however, black workers were banned from industrial jobs and a majority of labor unions, but they insisted on participating in the strike anyway. The black working class demonstrated a clear understanding that sacrificing one group of workers is a tactic that only benefits the interest of the capitalist class, never the interest of the working class. Thankfully, with every struggle comes important lessons that can be seized in future battles against the exploiting class. Only a few short years later, these lessons were applied in the General Strike of New Orleans in 1892. The New Orleans Trade Board attempted to use white supremacy to appeal to white workers against black workers to cause worker division in an effort to maintain low pay for all workers. As a result, one black union and two white unions, known as the Triple Alliance, and a citywide united front called the Working Men's Amalgamated Council, made of 25,000 workers, came together in a historic and unprecedented act of worker solidarity that crossed the racial divide, national identity, and industries to shut down the entire city, to the shock and horror of the racist capitalist class who were forced to negotiate with black and white workers together. This was a profound example of worker solidarity in the South and in the U.S. Worker solidarity across racialized divisiveness and worker solidarity in organized mass action, all anchored in a common working class interest against our common enemy, the exploiting capitalist class. Non-stop rich ruling class propaganda to divide the working class. Tactics of division are a constant battle in class war. The capitalist class creates the conditions of unnecessary suffering and premature death, and then uses dehumanizing anti-worker propaganda to convince us that other working and oppressed people are the barrier to a better quality of life, not the capitalist system itself. From the myth of skilled versus unskilled labor, when in reality, all labor requires a certain level of knowledge, training, and expertise, to diminishing the labor of unpaid domestic work, pitting private against public sector workers, black versus white workers, trans versus cis workers, documented versus undocumented workers, employed versus unemployed, and so on. The rich ruling class create hierarchies of labor, dehumanize and criminalize entire groups of working class people to erode access to public services and resources, and justify low wages, toxic work conditions, and discourage solidarity among the working class. When we internalize anti-worker propaganda, we may think we are advocating for ourselves, but we are actually shooting ourselves in the foot with a gun the capitalist class has given us. The class struggle has consistently shown us that it is only through fighting the capitalist class, not each other, have we ever gained better material conditions. Worker solidarity must be international. Our exploitation is international, and so is our labor. Nearly everything sold in the U.S. has passed through the hands of thousands of other workers. The iPhone supply chain, as one example, passes through 43 different countries, starting in the Congo, and is processed by tens of companies before arriving in the U.S. We already work together across colonial borders daily to produce for society, but we don't yet control what we collectively produce. This can only happen under socialism. Working and oppressed people globally are doubly oppressed by U.S. imperialism and their own bourgeois governments that work in collusion with the U.S. rich ruling class. They face the most immediate impacts of the climate crisis due to industrial polluting, mining, deforestation, and military invasions. All just so the U.S. capitalist class can secure resources and labor as cheaply as possible for mega profits. Anti-worker propaganda coupled with racism and xenophobia fed to us by all Western rich ruling classes want us to believe that slave-like working conditions in colonized countries are normal and justified. Fighting for international working solidarity goes beyond the type of work, job, industry, and even national identity. From the belly of the imperialist beast, the best worker solidarity we can provide to workers internationally is organizing against our own rich ruling class, not for concessions or reforms, but for the complete overthrow of the capitalist system in favor of socialism, while actively cheering on worker and national liberation struggles across colonial borders against their own ruling elite and bourgeois government. Workers of the world unite is not an empty slogan. It's a call to action for the most class-conscious workers to get organized and take the lead. There may never be one perfect moment of worldwide revolution all occurring at one time. However, those of us who are clear about what must be done must move forward and build conditions necessary for socialist revolution right here where we reside, with other working class people who are also committed to a future free of exploitation and oppression. Achieving working class solidarity here and across colonial borders is not a pie-in-the-sky dream. It has been demonstrated other times in history, and it is what is necessary today for our survival and our collective liberation. Forward, ever.